comment. We now move into council time, and this is Wednesday, January 25. We begin with public comment, which is on agenda items of council time today only. Are there any individuals who wish to speak, whether it be online or in the hearing room? Staff?
Yes, we have a caller online.
Okay.
Caller, you're unmuted. Please go ahead and state your name for the record and proceed with your comments.
Yes, my name is Kimberly Elbin, and I am a Clark County resident. So Rocky mentioned that this might be illegal, and then he goes on to saying how it can be done. I find that very disturbing. And to add to the public's distrust, you will be working with the Vancouver City Council, and they are United Nations members for 15 years of the ICLEI, which stands for International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and local governments are into that. And again, citizens will be waking up to this pandemic nightmare. I'm all for planning, but not under a United Nations entity. So I'm for improvements, just not in a socialist, Marxist, communist means. Follow the Constitution, Council, as citizens trust you are, at least until they wake up. I'm going to be speaking on council time minutes of, that you passed the minutes of, what was it, January 18. So I feel that I can finish my speech under that. I cannot imagine what a mass of citizens will do when they find out that this is a plan to depopulate and have a one world order government. Again, to the go to the jbs.org, and citizens, please look at all past public records that we the people have submitted and discern for yourselves. This council may claim severability in all of its agendas past, but inhumane practices will be answered and officials will be held accountable as the citizens will be made aware of the two agendas in action around the world, actually, the depopulation and the one world order. That's my goal, is to wake up citizens to this pandemic. A quick note of healthcare to the citizens. Wash bananas before your children handle them, as they have formaldehyde on them and will cause severe respiratory tract and skin irritation. Also handled by us and children are store receipts. They also have toxic nanochemicals on each receipt. And again, you and your children must be aware of this, as you may rub your eyes or nose with these nano BPA and or BPS toxic chemicals. And to get better nutrition to our school children in our federal public schools, GMO products were made to fatten up pigs and cattle, but when you start babies off with crap formula, which is full of GMOs, these children are fattening up and can't figure out why. Here's why. They overeat to get nutrition from non-nutritional foods, and that our hard-earned taxpayer dollars are paying for. So those children that
is the end of the time. Thank you for your testimony. And for others wishing to testify, I again point out that this particular public comment is to be on agenda items for council time only, not on agenda items from any previous meetings or any upcoming public hearing or any work session. It is relative to the council time agenda. So given that, are there others who wish to testify?
Chair, there are no others wishing to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for checking that. Under old business, is there a motion for approval of the minutes of January 18?
I move approval of the minutes of January 18th.
Second?
I'll second that.
Any objections, edits, anything? Hearing none, they stand approved as drafted. New business, the senior policy analyst position. Kathleen Otto.
Yes, so as you know, our policy analyst is leaving us to
go back up to Olympia. This position, while it does report to me, it does directly support the council. What is before you and what was sent to you by email is the posting that happened in 2017. I'm looking for any feedback, additions, changes that you may want in this posting. And if you can, maybe by Friday, give me your feedback unless you have something today so I can get this posted. And then what I anticipated that will happen is once the position is posted and we have qualified applicants, I'll be coming back to council to ask 2 of you to be on the interview panel as well so that you can provide feedback on the hire. Is there any additions or changes that you see right now? And if not, by the end of the week would be great.
To the manager, I have no comments right now on how you've described the position. I'm just curious if we could have an interim plan in place for a temporary fill, either someone even involved with our lobbyists who's got certainly the network, and certainly our policy analyst now has a network that she works with. I'm just wondering if, because not knowing how long this process will take, I mean, we still haven't filled our economic policy position, and after a national search, we found someone, and then he was let go after 3 days, and that position is still unfilled. So, I mean, I don't want to have this position unfilled with no person working it, even on a temporary basis.
Yes, so just clarifying the economic position, the person resigned, he was not let go. So I just want to correct that. So Amber and I will be meeting with Lindsay to talk about what her current projects are. I'm on your legislative calls as well, and we'll develop on a case-by-case scenario outside of the legislative process of projects and identify staff to support. So we'll make sure that happens.
I have a very different question, Kathleen, and it goes to something that I would ask about virtually any position that is not a frontline or immediate supervisorial type of position. What if we did not fill this position at all? What if we did not have a policy analyst senior? Would it affect anything that goes on with the county council or with your office directly?
I would have to defer to council on that because this position, again, supports the council in doing research. I think it was the research that's happened over the last couple of years really has been a focus of maybe 1 or 2 counselors. It currently does oversee Indigent Defense Program. We are removing that from this position, and we'll be talking with council about that the 1st of February. So the coordination, I guess, on the legislative process, if there's bills coming in and making sure that we're getting the right information to the applicable staff so that they can provide feedback as well as the council. But it's certainly, if there's something that the council desires to not fill right away, we can certainly look at that option as well.
Well, I guess my priority would be with the economic policy and the HR areas, and not with this, because of seeing over the 2 years that I've been on council, pretty much limited utility for the council as a whole. There's been when the incumbent participated in drafting position papers or such as that, it was obviously very, very helpful and well done. But I'm not sure in my own mind that presents a necessity to fill that position right away.
Well,
how do others feel?
I absolutely disagree 180%. We have no staff either to look at that works for the council, that works on code development, and our policy analyst has been a go-to person on drafting code, drafting resolutions, proclamations, running all the traps on trying to find funding or issues behind different legislation, from Vancouver Lake to Lacamas Lake to the railroad to Molten Falls Lindsay has been a go-to person to substantively inform me on how to proceed with next steps. It will be a huge hole if this position remains unfilled. And I agree, the economic development position would be vitally important as well. It's a huge hole that it's basically what we don't know, how we would have benefited if we had both of these positions filled all the time. This is a value-added position where we don't have, we don't have a drafting section here. We don't have research analysts here, kind of the equivalent of an MSRC. And I know, and I've been accused of kind of taking over her time over these last few years because I am very involved in policy issues for the county to improve what we're doing here. And Lindsay was a go-to person that did nuts and bolts work. This broadband initiative that she's been helpful on since the very beginning of me joining the council is now just hitting fruition, and not only because the federal government's making capital infrastructure money available through the state, through commerce, but she has been a linchpin in connecting the dots to move forward on all of these issues. It would be a huge void to leave both of these positions unfilled.
Both positions being which, the economic policy?
Correct.
And this, yeah, okay, thank you. I needed that clarification. I doubt that other counselors have such a full, robust perspective because of being new to the council. Is that correct, or do some of you wish to address this as well?
Chair, I would love to address that.
Go ahead.
I'm in full agreement with Councilor Medvedji. And sharing kind of a perspective from being new, I think is also important. And I think that we were elected not just so we can sit in these chairs and vote yes and no to a lot of the issues that have to go forward with the county, but they also brought us in here for some of the ideas and thoughts that we have and our desire to make changes in the county. And we can have our time consumed completely by the more, day-to-day processes, and having somebody that can work with us to accomplish some of the goals that we have is, in my opinion, it's extremely important. And also somebody, because sometimes we have great ideas, we just don't know how to get from A to B. And I see Lindsay as someone that can help us get there. And so I would say I would definitely be supportive of filling the position again. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, this is Sue. I would agree. I haven't had an opportunity to work with Lindsay very much, but I was looking forward to that opportunity. I know in my district there have been a number of concerns related to the code, and I'm not really sure how that process gets moved forward, but I believe Lindsay would have been my go-to person on that. And with broadband, there's dollars that are coming down and plans that need to be made to access those dollars and distribute them in an equitable manner. So that was another arena I was hoping to work with a policy analyst with. So I would support filling it sooner than later.
Is broadband included in the job here? I just am not seeing that word choice, so I was just wanting to check.
I don't believe it is. I think this is more of a generic policy support, and therefore it could encompass broadband or other types of policy support.
Mm-hmm. Other comments from the council?
Madam Chair, this is Councilor Belcott. I just have to ditto on what Councilor Marshall and Young said. I haven't either had much of an opportunity to work with Lindsay, but it would be nice, since we are, the majority of the council is new at this point, it would be nice to have an advisor or consultation on policy, because I am new and she was a wealth of She had a wealth of information and experience. Obviously, the new person that may replace her might have a learning curve just like the current counselors, but that's obviously going to be determined by the candidates that we see and apply. But I do support replacing her position at this point as well. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. I think the feeling of council is very clear on that. But also, I can guarantee that I will ask the same question the next time an open position comes up. So, is there anything else that you wish to give by way of feedback, particularly on the job to be done relative to the things that you have said you expect from this position?
Madam Chair, I have a question on the other position that was mentioned by Councilor Medvegy. Since that
Yes.
position has been vacant for some time, is that justified? I mean, do we need to have that position filled? Since it's been vacant so long? I don't know because I haven't been on the council long enough.
I think the economic policy position, we'd need to see the same information before us, Councillor Belcott, with what the job is, what the qualifications are, and maybe we should have that discussion sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
there's an HR and an HR assistant position as well. So the same perhaps for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair, can you clarify for me? You said there's an HR assistant position that's open?
What is the title? Assistant manager for HR?
So the director of HR is vacant right now. We're actively recruiting, and I am looking at options of potentially moving a vacant FTE to provide another management layer in HR.
And what is that position called? The title?
The working title will be HR manager.
So that's the reference there.
I just was curious, we're looking at a document from 2017. Is the pay going to be adjusted?
Yes, all of this, and it'll look different as well because we have a different system. We have Workday now that would do the recruiting. So yes, this will be updated accordingly. And one thing that council may want to look at is you want to expand this at all to include somebody with economic development. I know that the county has a contract with CREDC for some of that work, but is that something that we want to try to see if we can capture in this one position as well?
Would that impact the economic policy position, Kathleen?
I wouldn't do both. I would not recommend both. So if you want somebody full-time and if you think that there is work for full-time economic development, I would do that as a separate. If you think that it can be incorporated into this position within the scope, I would not recommend doing both though.
You would not recommend doing both positions, but perhaps the job could entail coverage of both elements. Is that right?
I would not recommend having economic development in this position and post a separate economic development position.
Right.
So if we're going to expand this particular one to include economic development as well, I would not recommend filling the vacant economic development position.
I personally would love to see what that job description would look like for a policy analyst. The two have so much crossover anyway, that it's a natural marriage, I guess you would say, of the two approaches and responsibilities.
County Manager, do you have a preference yourself?
That's a loaded question.
I think she wants the positions left open so she has the budget capacity, more flexibility.
That does help with our, yes, with our budget capacity. And when I'm looking at the qualifications on here, it does have finance and economics already identified in the qualifications. If it was me, I would try to capture both of them in the one position. But I don't know how much our new council is going to be utilizing this position. So it could, I mean, we could say desirable and see what kind of candidates that we get.
On a personal note, like this position here, without exceeding the amount of time that should be allotted to one counselor, I do see myself spending quite a bit of time.
And when we, or when council decided, and I mean, obviously the charter provides the details, but I do respect that they work for you and provide work for you, even though by charter they're under my purview. But one way that we were trying to address that initially is the policy report on council time agenda, which is a time when this position was to share what they were working on with counselors to ensure that there was an equitable split in that, like one counselor wasn't monopolizing all the time and therefore others were not receiving that. So we can go back to that, the intent of those updates during weekly council time, so there's full transparency with the council.
That's an excellent approach. I support that completely. Also, I appreciate adding in the finance aspects of economic development to this job, because I think that will actually assist in spreading the usage from this position to all of the council. At least more so than is the case right now.
So a couple of additional comments. One, I don't know how far we strayed from the original purpose of the policy advisor. Transparency on the work that position is doing amongst all the counselors is vital. And it is a mechanism where we can't respond all for whether it's the manager or a policy advisor or an economic development advisor, to be able to talk to all of us one-on-one on things that they are working on, making progress on, or what the next steps are. I mean, it is vitally important to make sure the work that's occurring in those offices is being shared with all the counselors, so that all the counselors are up to speed on it and can weigh in with their policy guidance. These positions give us capacity as a council. That's why I've always been in favor of filling that position. And as rightly corrected, the person did resign after a few days. And I don't know specifically what we're missing by not having that position filled, but there are so many opportunities where that person could give us great guidance, find grants, grant opportunities, you name it, you know, CREDC works for so many people. I don't feel like I have the relationship with them that I would want. And we ran into that a few years ago when I asked a simple question: how many businesses have you recruited to Clark County? The answer was 0. And then they changed the report because we were in the process of voting on whether to hire them again. You know, they do great work and they help our local businesses, like kind of a commerce department would. But they have many employers. They don't respond directly to us. I'm hopeful they're doing a better job on recruiting outside businesses up to Clark County to grow and build businesses that'll hire employees. You know, an economic advisor really could assist, I think. And it gives us capacity. They're very broad portfolios, and if we added an economic or emphasized an economic background in this advertisement, I don't know what if anything different would result from the candidates that would apply. But the reality for the position that we have had, and we basically had an insider view, someone who had a really vast experience with how Olympia works, how to get things done. And I'm hoping we can replicate that with the next candidate, and across the board, from economic development, et cetera. So I'm in favor of filling both positions because I think it would add capacity to this council's ability to do its job from a policy and legislative perspective.
Chair?
Yes, Counselor?
I would be supportive of a full-time economic development advisor. I think it's an important arena that would be good for us to have some independent advice on all of that. And I think in working with the ports and the cities, I think there's opportunities we may not be aware of. I think maybe if it's not in the budget, if you know, we could put that in as something desirable. I do believe if we have someone with that background along with the other policy experience, it might really demonstrate the need to have a full-time person working on that. But I think in the maybe not too much longer term, it would be really good for us to have a full-time economic development advisor as well.
Kathleen, when do you anticipate that we'll next see this draft coming to us before it's posted?
I'm actually hoping to receive feedback by the end of this week so that I can post this position.
On Monday?
Or Friday.
Or Friday. So will we be seeing it tomorrow or the next day in that event?
No, not as I currently have it planned. I'm just asking for feedback and if you have any specific changes, and then I want to get it posted. So I'm not planning on bringing it back next week. And if there's feedback today, I can incorporate, or if you think of something over the next couple of days, I can incorporate that. But I want to get this posted by Friday.
Yeah, no question there. I didn't mean or say next week. I think this week, but I would like to know things like that are going to be changed just by virtue of the date, such as the salary, the timing of the position, and anything pertaining to the job that you see changing relative to economic development. So if you could circulate that to the council, please, at the time that you are getting it posted, I think that would be very informative.
I'm happy with it as drafted. I don't have any specific changes. I mean, this is kind of how it went out years ago.
Yeah, in 2017, and it will look different. Like I said, this was using an old system that we had in HR, so it will look and feel different as it goes out, but the content, I don't know if it's changed a whole lot from when it was recruited last time. I can certainly have at least an emphasis in here on the economic development just to see what type of candidates we get.
My personal feedback would be to post this right away. I think it's critical to get that role filled, and then we can continue on the discussion about the other position.
Okay, thank you. If you guys have any other feedback, please let me know by Friday. Thanks.
Next is under new business, the road vacation, Northwest Lancaster Road. Is that you, Ken?
That's me. Good morning, Chair Bowerman. Good morning, Council. I'd like to just take a minute to introduce myself. I'm Ken Lader, the Public Works Director, and I also serve as the County Engineer, which is the capacity that we're before you this morning for. So when you see something like the Office of the County Engineer, that really has to do with the state statute that requires that the county have employed a county engineer to be responsible for all of the roads and bridges. So I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm just going to take a breath, but just want to make sure that I said hi to each of you as new council members and welcome you to your new job as I'm working diligently on my new job as Public Works Director as well. So it is my pleasure to also introduce Laura Henry Sly and Liz Apostolos, who are our staff from our Real Properties section with us today. And Laura's going to be going into a presentation on the Northwest Lancaster Road vacation. This is not the type of vacation that we all like, where we get to go somewhere and enjoy ourselves, but Laura will describe what this is about. It's a bit unusual. And then we will all be available for questions when she's done. And I think with that, I'll hand it off to Laura and look forward to what you might have for us as far as questions. So thank you.
Well, good morning, councilors. For the record, my name is Laura Henry Sly, and I am the Real Property Services Manager for Clark County. The business that we have in front of you today is to, one, introduce you to the process of road vacations. We have a lot of these that we will be placing in front of you this coming year. So as a new council, we thought that we might want to have you kind of give you a high-level background of what is a road vacation, because I wouldn't say they're rare, but they don't happen very often. And secondly, the reason why we're in front of you is to give you some background of the upcoming Northwest Lancaster Road vacation, which we will be having a public hearing coming very shortly, very soon on February 7th coming up. So the high level idea or the high level processes of a road vacation, in simplistic terms, is a road vacation is simply relinquishing the public's interest in that road, and that the property is returned to the property in which it was carved out of. The process for the road vacations is outlined in our RCW's chapter 36.87, and it is pretty much, there's 3 chapters or 3 steps in which we move this forward through the process. So the first process is the Public Works and the council accepts the petition from the petitioner, and at that point the council directs the county engineer to examine the request and to submit a written report. As in relationship to the Lancaster Road vacation, that step occurred on October 4th of last year. The second step is this is when we go to public hearing, at the direction of the county council, the county engineer, and that's Ken, will submit his written report. And at this time, this is where the community will have the opportunity to speak for or against the non-support of the petition. If the council wishes to proceed forward with the road vacation, they issue what we call a preliminary order of vacation, which is subject to the final road vacations. And this will be submitted in the packet for you guys to look at in a couple of weeks. You may already have it, I don't know. Some of those conditions can be paying for the value of the land that is being surrendered to the petitioner or petitioners. There's administrative costs that are associated with bringing this in front of you, and the evaluation and the staff reports and writing the reports. In this case, in a lot of cases, the council will ask if it's going to be gated to ensure that emergency vehicles can have access to the property. And lastly, a common thing is to make sure that whatever utilities are there in place today, that they have the right to remain what was originally a public road. And the third step, or the third chapter in all of this, is once all the conditions have been met and finalized, that it's been identified in the preliminary order to vacate, the council will come to the council again, and you will execute the final road vacation, and that is then recorded in the public auditor's office, and then it's done. It's completed. So that's a very simplistic, high-level view on what a road vacation is. So we'll be having chapter 2 in a couple of weeks. So the Lancaster Road, so if we can go to the next slide. So just a high-level brief background on the Lancaster history, and I've been working with the petitioner for over 10 years, and it's been a long journey. And so Lancaster has a very long history with the county. It was first established in 1930 as Lindsay Road. The family, the Morgan family purchased all of what you can see is the Klaus Newitt farm. That's that red triangular piece in the 1940s. And the picture that you have here is right out of our historical road books. So just a kind of brief overview of how this was established. There's a state statute of how roads are created, and then there's state statute of how they are vacated. So next slide, please. So this is just an aerial view on what the Morgan family owns. It kind of gives a perspective. You have Cowlitz County to the north. You have Lewis River that separates Clark County from Cowlitz. Lancaster Road begins at 71st Avenue. The Morgan family is asking to vacate from approximately from 71st Avenue all the way to the south bank of the Lewis River. Okay, next slide. In 2008, Mr. Morgan, he petitioned the county to vacate Lancaster Road in response to several incidences where people had been struck and killed on the bridge trestle, or the trestle bridge. At that time, Washington state law prevented the county from vacating this road. In 2013, the Burlington Northern Railroad installed a gate to deter the trespassers onto the railroad tracks. And unfortunately, the gate has not hindered trespassers. So in the picture on the right, upper right-hand side, you can see this is where Burlington Northern put in a significant gate. And the picture on the south, or in the bottom left-hand side, that is what the gate, with your picture the picture taken from the gate upwards towards. It's not a well-traveled road, but it is an attractive nuisance for people to come down and get to the river and be on the trestle tracks. In 2020, Mr. Morgan successfully lobbied the lawmakers in Olympia, and he was instrumental in the passage of Senate Bill 5613, which allows the exception of the state statute specifically for Clark County to examine this request. It is important to note that this amendment to the state statute sunsets at the end of this year on December 31st. As a result of this, Mr. Morgan officially petitioned the county in August of last year to vacate this. So we're moving forward. And so one of the delays from 2020 to now is COVID related. We couldn't hold any public hearings, and that is a state requirement. And so this is where we are at today. I'm going to transfer the presentation over to Liz because she's been working with Mr. Morgan about all of the incidences that have happened. And so at the next slide, and I will yield to Liz.
Hello. So with speaking with Mr. Morgan, I've got some more details. They unaffectionately call this bridge the ghost bridge due to all the incidences that they've had to respond to over the years. As you could see in the former slide, the gate that was installed by Burlington Northern, you can park next to it. It crosses the road itself, but when I went out to the location itself, you can simply walk around the gate. They have video cameras up for security, and they're notified whenever anyone does park there and walk around it, but it's simply just walking around the gate itself to just walk down to the river. And then you can't really see it in the picture, but it's just a couple of feet off the road to the left there that you can just walk right up to the railroad tracks and then across the bridge over the river. So in these pictures, you can see several instances of trespass here, and the fatalities down there on the slide to the right. In 2004, an adult man walked with 4 children across the bridge, attempting to cross the river to the other side, and a train came. The train comes at approximately 70 miles per hour. There's not much warning by the time you can hear it. If you're near the bridge at all, it's too late. 3 of the children survived by holding on to supports, and the adult male and one of the children, a 12-year-old, were hit and killed. The surviving children were taken to the hospital. In 2009, 2 men were walking across the bridge, and 1 man was struck and killed. And in 2012, a group of friends was jumping off the bridge into the river in the summertime, and one female was holding a wallet and some shorts of someone who was jumping into the river, and she was struck and killed by the train. The jumper survived. It is something that happens frequently. People are not just struck by trains, they are also injured by jumping into the river when the water levels are low. We have support letters from Clark County Fire and Rescue. They frequently respond to injuries and fatalities down at the river and at the bridge. They also respond to injuries and car accidents on Lancaster Road because it is remote, because it is narrow, because it's relatively straight, but there's not great sight distance. People tend to speed through that area, but there's farm equipment because of the surrounding farm property. So they'll come around a curve or over a hill and not have enough time and have accidents there. So they have to frequently respond to accidents and incidences there. We also have a letter of support from the Port of Ridgefield due to the fatalities down there. They would also like to support the vacation of Lancaster Road due to public safety issues down there. There have been instances of theft from the farm and other citizens evading police on ATVs. They come down Lancaster Road from Ridgefield on ATVs and they go up onto railroad property, and then they cross the bridge into the other county to evade police. And of course, the police can't go over the bridge, so they evade police, and that's not an infrequent occurrence, apparently. Motorcycle riders also do that. We have a daily occurrence of a gentleman that comes over from the other county, from Cowlitz County, to come to work in Ridgefield, and he walks across every morning and every night to come to work. And they say that, it's just they use it as a pedestrian path, because if they were to take a vehicle, it's a 12-mile detour, or they use it as a pedestrian path to cross the river to get to work. It may seem that it's pretty far out in the country there, but it's actually not that far from downtown Ridgefield. And I had a long discussion with Mr. Morgan yesterday. He said it's actually on sunny days, getting closer to the summertime, where you have lots of high schoolers that try to ditch school during the week. If they don't want their parents to see their car around town, they'll kind of come down onto Lancaster Road, park down there because it's out of the way, and then they just park and go around the gate and walk down to the river and go in the river and walk down on the train tracks and up on the bridge. And he said he just can't keep them away from there. And hoping to vacate starting at the end of 71st Avenue there, it just makes it just a little bit harder. They can't see the river from there. They can't keep going. It's just less visible. They're less likely to park and walk on private property for a mile down to a river where they could be deterred and asked to leave from private property, rather than just parking in the middle of the woods and walking down and having fun with their friends and ditching school and walking up on the railroad tracks. And he's just hoping, he said that every time he or his family or the farm workers hear a train, they're just waiting for sirens. Every single time, every single day, they're waiting for sirens. They're waiting for the ambulance to show up and another notification of another fatality. And he said it's just the absolute horror of constant injuries and constant fatalities has just worn on them over the years. And he said he knows it's not going to stop it completely, but he's just doing what he can to hope to just stop what he can stop. There's the bridge. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful area. It's nice and quiet. There's wildlife. There's a big area to park if you can get past the gate. I can see the appeal of it, but The appeal is to walk out onto the bridge, which is right there. It's just a couple of feet up a little hill, and they walk out onto the bridge. And by the time you hear the train, it's too late. So there is access within 2 miles of each direction to other boat launches, to other access to the river, to the public river. This is not removing a popular access point. This is not a boat launch that is available to the public because of the gate installed by Burlington Northern. There is no public access to boats or other beach access or anything like that that we're removing from the public here. This is a public safety issue that we're just trying to enforce.
So I think that concludes our presentation. Are there any questions from the council or comments?
And if I could just jump in real quick, sorry, Laura, thank you for that. I did want to say, despite Liz's moving testimony and those examples, as the county engineer, it's my duty to really look at the road from a public perspective as what service is provided by the road. You know, is there a future circulation need? Is there a transportation need that we see as far as development of the road, or what service it provides to the county? And then, of course, the safety issues are obvious here. But you'll see that in my engineer's report, which you should have a draft packet of the handout for the hearing for the 7th of February. But consider that we've looked at it from that really transportation perspective to see if there is utility, and you can see the conclusion in my report as well, that we don't feel that that provides a future service, let alone a current service for the transportation needs of the county. So, and now, as Laura asked, if you have any questions, we're available.
Thank you. Well, first off, Ken, thanks for stepping up into your new role. It's an important one, so thanks for that. I just want to say that I visited this site and spent some time with Mr. Morgan, and to me it seemed like the road was kind of a long driveway down to their farm, which is a historic site. And in terms of public access, their property, they're really planning remarkable things on that property. It's adjacent to the Ridgefield Wildlife Refuge, and the intention is for it to be a mitigation bank. So it's, as far as ecological fish and wildlife benefits, they're just abundant down there. And there are plans to do public education and have the public come on in more of a curated role onto the property to learn more about what they're doing, but it wouldn't, it would be controlled access. And just the other tidbit that I learned is that I believe there's 60 trains a day that go through, just right through their farms. So this makes some sense to me.
Chair, I've got a couple questions. Okay, I'll go ahead. You know, I'm looking at this right now on Google Maps, and I can see why people use it. You know, from a strategic point, it's like the only place you can get across for a long period of time. So this is an interesting issue for me. What utilities are located on that road that we would still be responsible for?
Yeah, Councilor Young, sorry. That's a great question. So I believe, and Liz and Laura can correct me if I have this wrong, but there is a CPU access through there, and I think that's on poles for power. And then there's also, it's not along or inside the prism of the road right away, but there is a pipeline for gas that's nearby, but I don't think it would be part of this vacation. Is there anything I missed?
Yeah, so I spoke to Clark Public Utilities this morning, and they're all set, but they do have the poles. Lumen is there as well. And then the pipeline, their pipeline itself, it like a foot of it goes over Lancaster Road, but they do have a little like a little maintenance building shed thing that is a little farther up, that they would just, it's just set off the road about 100 feet or so, that they have already, it's kind of gated in and they've already established access to it. And then how that works is they have the easement through Clark County. And if this is approved by the council, they just transfer those easements into the private name. Some vacations get rid of the actual road itself, but that would not be the case here. He'd be installing a turnaround, and then he would be privatizing the access to Lancaster Road itself, and he would be locking it and putting an access gate there that would give access to utilities and to emergency services. So that's already been established with Mr. Morgan.
Okay, and the county would no longer be responsible for maintenance on the road, correct?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Sounds to me like it makes sense. The one thing that I did want to double check with is whether or not we communicated with Woodland or Cowlitz County, since it's right on the border there.
That's a great question as well, Councilor Young, and I don't believe that we have. And if that's something you'd like us to follow up on, we can, of course.
I think it would be beneficial. Most likely they'll turn around and say, we don't really care what happens over there. But I think, you know, fostering a good relationship with our neighbors, I think it'd be productive to reach out.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Bowerman, this is Leslie Lopez. May
Yes,
I
go
interject
ahead,
for a
Leslie.
moment? Thank you. I just wanted to make clear for the council, in case it isn't clear, with this presentation, that it's just information that's being provided, that there is a public hearing on February 7th, so there is no decision-making happening today. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the council. Thank you.
The recommendation to accept the report would come on the 7th, correct?
That is correct. Thank
Correct.
you.
Thank you. Do you,
I have brief
Steph, do you
comments.
see any issue at all with the accessibility of the emergency vehicles?
Liz, do you want to speak to that a little bit more? We don't, and they've been supportive as far as what we've proposed. There will be a turnaround that will be installed by Mr. Morgan at basically the end of 71st there where we're vacating. But emergency vehicles would still have access to the roadway if they needed to get up to the other end. So.
I actually wasn't sure about how an emergency access gate would work. And so I asked Mr. Morgan, because the current Burlington Gate provides emergency vehicle access. And he explained it to me. There's a special lock provided by the fire department and emergency vehicles. And it's a big lock thing. And there's a key on the front of the emergency vehicles. And so when they pull up to it, they unlock it somehow and it just lets them through. So it's kind of a universal thing and it lets them through that. So he also extended an invitation if anybody would like to come. I know that it looks quite different on maps and in photographs. If anybody would like to come see the actual distance there and come to the property, he'd be very happy to host anybody. I know that, I mean, I've been working on this for over a year, and when I went down to the property, it meant quite a bit difference to me to see it and to stand there and see how close it is. It's quite different.
One other question on what would be a change. I find the maintenance of the road now to be quite good. Do you see any change in that from a vacation?
So, Chair Bowerman, the maintenance of the road that if we vacated Lancaster, you're asking about the maintenance of it in particular?
Yes, and particularly the results of it. I think right now it looks very good.
Yeah, and the maintenance of that would fall back to the property owner upon the vacation being approved. So I can't speak to what they would or would not do, but it would really be part of the farm at that point.
Does he have a track record?
As far as not maintaining things, or I'm
Or
sorry,
maintaining them.
Liz
He
can
does
probably
plan
speak to
to
that.
keep it up.
Yeah.
It like it said, it does, I mean, if you've driven it, it feels like an access point to the historic home at the end of the road there. There is a large white historic home overlooking the river and the Tress Bridge. And it does access those other items down the road. And they do have large farm vehicles that have to use that road. They do plan on keeping it up because it is their personal access point for all of those things. So and when weather gets bad, I mean, they do have other kind of roads through the tree areas, but that is their main access point when the weather gets worse. So they do plan on keeping it up.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions from council?
So I don't have any questions. I do have a couple comments, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilor Medvici.
So I appreciate the presentation today. I think it was very well done, and I especially like the photographs. I think you've captured all of the issues that surround this vacation. There's just a couple of points that, number one, I didn't realize this was going on for like 10 years. I was out there with Mr. Morgan years ago, and then we did kind of get it on the council's agenda. I think Julie Olson was out there too, and really started this process more in earnest, if you will. So one, I didn't know it was in District 1, and that had been going on for like 10 years. The comments I want to make around that are, oh my gosh, everything takes so long. This is a good example of a nuisance, what we call in the legal profession an attractive nuisance. And our county road is providing access to the county attractive nuisance. It is God's country out there. I mean, it's pristine. I mean, I think the time that I was out along the river, particularly, I think I saw 6 eagles. I mean, it's God's country, and these people are very fortunate to own this. And I want to comment that they are like the penultimate of good stewards. They have federal overlay of conservation on their farm. I can't remember, it's been so long now, over 1,700 acres, I think. They are good stewards of the land. In just casual conversation, I was talking to the owner about, well, what do you think about the county getting involved in composting manure, primarily in the context of horse manure. And that generated some research on his part and experiments and how many truckloads it would take. And I mean, these are good people that have to worry about someone committing suicide or getting killed on this trestle. It is an attractive nuisance. It really makes common sense to close it. It doesn't go anywhere, and I know there's a lot of discussion right now in Cowlitz County on the bottoms, whether they want to seek conservation or development. I mean, that's going to be an ongoing discussion for them. I agree that we should at least alert them to the issue on our side of the county, but I don't see anything happening immediately across the river in Cowlitz County ever, other than conservation efforts, reserves being expanded in what is an amazing, pristine area. So I'm all in favor of moving forward on this, and I look forward to the public hearing and comment. If Cowlitz County does send a flare up saying, oh my gosh, we're expecting to put another highway there. You know, I doubt that's the case, but the bridge has no bicycle path, it has no walking path. It is a death trap for anyone walking on it. And yeah, these are anecdotes that only occur a couple, you know, pretty rarely. It is an attractive nuisance, and it's just a matter of time before someone gets killed out there exploring through. And I think Susan had it exactly right. When you drive up there, all of this looks like a private driveway to to the home and farm owner's property. I mean, there really is no county business transiting that road right now. It is just their driveway, pretty much. So I'm in favor of moving this forward. I'm always surprised on how long everything takes, but process is important. So thanks for this great presentation.
Thank you, Councilor Medviji. And if I could just speak for a second to the length of the process, I think the primary issue that we've been up against on this particular property is that it is providing that water access, and so it wasn't available in state law for us to proceed with the road vacation until Mr. Morgan successfully had that law changed. So, you know, good for him for his efforts there, and this has allowed us to be before you today and for the upcoming public hearing on the issue. So, thank you.
Thank you. And that's helpful to
Chair,
understand the time frame there. Yes, go ahead.
Chair, just one last question. So you mentioned the state law needing to be changed, but I'm not sure I heard this right. Was that amendment sunsetted? You mentioned a December 31st deadline. I wonder if there's some time sensitivity to move forward with this.
That's correct, Councilor Marshall. That amendment to the law does sunset at the end of this year, so there is a time component. And we believe we can continue to move things forward now if the council accepts the road vacation. So,
thank you.
Other comments from council? In that event, we will look forward to February 7 and the hearing at that time, and perhaps hearing more from you then as well.
thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor reports.
Just one quick item that I think it's going to be coming up, and this is also something that Lindsay would have worked on. We have Black History Month coming up next month. I've had some contact with the new chair or president of the NAACP, Yolanda Fraser. So we're hoping to have a resolution proclamation soon from them that they'd like to present to commemorate Black History Month. My brief discussion in the past and recently with the NAACP was, you know, trying to emphasize to them to give it some local flavor. You know, let's emphasize some local contributions if we can, instead of just kind of going with the national theme. So we'll see what comes up, but I'm hoping that the council will support that proclamation.
Thank you, Councilor. Let me ask you, Councilor Belcott, was there anything from the Regional Toll Advisory Committee meeting that you attended to share?
No, since it's brand new to me, I'm just observing and learning at this point. There were a lot of opinions by different commissioners and discussion, and then I jumped into our council meeting. So no, not at this point.
Well, we'll look for it next time, okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other councilor reports?
Yes, Chair.
Go ahead, Councilor Young.
Yes, all the council members received an email being appointed to the board of directors for WASAC. There is a vote that's taking place for somebody that's going to be joining a committee. And I'm just curious in the future how we want to handle these on our different boards, because I believe that we need to represent the council as a whole in these districts. So to what degree do we prefer to just let things roll, and when do we want to involve the remainder of the council, and if and when, in the rare occasion that there is a decision or a vote in one of our boards and commissions?
This particular one, is this the vote that involved 3 people from other counties?
Yes.
Yeah. when you're casting a vote, you could always ask if anyone has an informed opinion. It's probably somewhat doubtful when that is the case, that they're from other counties, but it would always, when you have the time, be good to ask.
So in the future, similar to how I handled it, essentially letting people know that a vote is coming up, providing the information, and just asking if there's any feedback. But the OPM part of this, OPMA, we would need to have any kind of deliberation at the dais, correct?
Yeah, and any direction and decision making should be in the public. So you could do it during you can certainly send something ahead of time and just say to council that I'm sharing this for your information and we'll discuss it at the next council time. And then during council reports, so then when you can have that public discussion and get feedback.
Okay. Does everybody feel the same way on that?
I would just add, we had a recent example of and there's a lot of variance in some of these more regional, or in this case, national representation that we don't have any detailed knowledge of. And we had our last council meeting in December, and then we got a request to vote on the Timber Caucus representative, and it caused a problem. And they actually have different voting rules because of the diversity of opinion throughout the state in the timber-focused counties. Councils that had 3 or 5 or 7 actually could dilute their vote. So each councilor could vote, so you would have a 1/5 vote or a 1/3 vote or a unanimous vote. But we had no public meeting to accomplish that just prior to Christmas break, the holiday break. So anyway, it would be good to kind of figure out a better process. I mean, I don't know any of these candidates. I've never gone to any NACO meeting anywhere. No doubt they do good work. It's just kind of in that area of, it hasn't been my focus. And boy, it would be great if someone on the council actually teed themselves up as a leader, so we had representation directly from Clark County on some of these committees and boards. So I'm in favor of kind of taking a look at how we should be doing that process, but knowing that we have to have a public hearing or meeting in order to discuss whether we're going to, 3 of us are going to support a particular candidate for a position. I mean, quite frankly, I am spread thin in so many ways. NACO has membership on our behalf hasn't been in the forefront of my mind, and I don't know any of the candidates at all. And with the Timber Caucus, it became an issue of getting recommendations from other counties who knew the participants. You know, that was the only way. And then looking at resumes and figuring out, well, does someone from a policy standpoint reflect Clark County better than from some other county? So, I mean, I think we do need to take a look at how we handle this and the process for it. I'm not prepared to vote for any particular person for NACO at this point.
Well, I envisioned a little bit more informal process where Glenn or whoever the person is that's submitting the vote would ask if there's any feedback. And if there is any, then great. And if there isn't any, that's fine too. But not the need for everyone to vote on every vote that comes up that we face. So I think an informal process has a role. And like I said before, it's doubtful that on very many of the issues that involve candidates only from out of county would we have an opinion, and that's okay. Then I think it's up to the representative to figure it out and cast the best ballot on our behalf.
Chair, just one little thought there, and I kind of misunderstood where you're going with informal, but I think part of the issue is that when I do send out an email saying here are the candidates, you guys go ahead and take a look. The only method to receive feedback is at the dais in a public setting. Otherwise, we risk violating OPMA if I have more than one counselor
Yes,
respond
of course,
to
but
me.
informal means that if we have feedback, we give it. If we don't, we don't. We don't need to take a vote
Sure.
on
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
vote. Yeah, that's what I
agreed.
meant. Yeah.
We all received that same email. I mean, every one of us, I'm assuming. So I just didn't have an interest in it, so I didn't get involved. I mean, it was as simple as that. I mean, there's thousands of counties in the country. It's hard enough to have an impact on our own legislature, much less weighing into on a national level.
Perhaps maybe one way we could do this is to email it out and then have the expectation that the next council time, if somebody has feedback, they can bring it up. Does that make sense? That way we don't even bring the subject up unless somebody has feedback.
That's fine with me.
Fine with me.
I think that works. Therefore, the communication is going and the openness is occurring. Are there any other councilor reports?
Madam Chair, I do want to add, I do have a meeting today at 1:30 with one of the RTC, actually two of the RTC folks. So if I hear anything, I will let my fellow council members know.
Terrific. Thank you. Anything else? Work session requests. We have the one for public participation plan for our periodic comprehensive plan update. Kathleen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So yes, Community Planning is requesting a 1-hour work session towards the end of February regarding the public participation plan for the 2025 periodic comprehensive plan update. The purpose of this plan, it describes the steps that Clark County will take to provide opportunity for public engagement, and as well as the preliminary scope of work for the 2025 periodic update. There will be a hearing on this at a later date, and this work session is just to go over the draft to receive and provide feedback to staff on how council has any input on the preliminary draft.
So my only question is, if this isn't on the whole comprehensive plan update, this is just the public participation portion of it, which I'm not that familiar with, having not lived through it, but having seen some of the public participation slides from the previous one, do they really need an entire hour to discuss the public participation plan?
I'll ask staff. I can't answer for them right now, but I will work with staff to see if they need that full amount. But it is, you are correct, this is one portion of that comprehensive plan and one that's mandated by law.
Any other comments? Do you need a thumbs up for going ahead?
Yeah, I'm not hearing any concerns, so we'll go ahead and get that scheduled. Thank you.
Great. Is Lindsay here with us today?
I am. I apologize. I'm dealing with strep throat, but I don't have any additional update for you today.
Oh, get better. That's not good. We will now move into executive session for a period of about 35 minutes. Afterwards, I understand we will not have a vote taken or any kind of a report afterwards. Is that correct, Leslie?
That is correct, Chair Bowerman. There will be no after action.
So it is 11:36. Let's, what would you say, about 10 after would be a logical time for us to come back and conclude with council time?
For 35 minutes, that would be, I believe, 12:11 if we went the full 35 minutes.
So let's go to 12:15. That gets us time to go in and out and so on. So I will see all of you counselors in executive session in just a moment. Thank you all.
Hello, council is extending their executive session for 15 more minutes and will be returning at 12:30. Thank you. The council is extending their executive session for 10 more minutes and will be returning at 12:40. Thank you.
Thank you. It is Wednesday, January the 25th, and we have been in executive session for 3 such sessions. They have concluded. We do not have an after action report in any way. So we're back in council time for the singular purpose of adjournment. This meeting is adjourned.